Each badger marks the track with its own scent.
His black legs are short but very powerful for digging. The name badger probably comes from the French word bêcher, meaning digger.
Hello, everybody. Hello. It's a very good day to you from the Cricket Badger podcast. It's James, it's Lucas, back with you as always. And looking back at a Perth Test match, which England were absolutely magnificent in, won very convincingly by 565 runs, and everything's looking good with the world. Or was I watching the fake stream, Lucas? I don't know.
Well, hello everybody out there. Well, I was watching a totally different match, James, compared to your one. I was watching Australia win thanks to mainly to Travis Head in the fourth innings. So I don't know which one you were watching, but you might have been watching a previous tour. But
I prefer to talk about the one I was watching in my imagination. But unfortunately, I was like you, glued to the 2 days in Perth. Australia winning, obviously convincingly in the end. But it was very close at some degree. I mean, let's before we get into the actual match itself, and I've got loads to say about England. Don't get me wrong, yeah, there's loads to say about England. But 2 day test match, 2 day test matches in an Ashes series. I mean, I think the caveat to that was I thought the bowling was very, very good, mainly throughout, and the batting was poor at times. But is a 2 day test match in an Ashes series a good thing? It's not really, is it?
Well, it depends who's on the winning side, James. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. Probably to a neutral, probably not. But I've always said I'd rather see 20 wickets fall in 1 day than a 1,000-run Test match like we saw Australia versus Pakistan. I'd rather see that than batting on a road. To be honest, James. So I've got no problem with this. Probably five tests of this. Yeah, maybe not. But it was exciting cricket nonetheless. It was extremely good game, and you hit the nail on the head. I don't think there was anything wrong with this pitch. There were no demons in this pitch. You know, just ask Travis Head. Just ask Marnus Labuschagne in the fourth innings. So silly shots, mainly by England and Australia in their first innings. I thought the pitch was out of 10. I'd probably say a 7. I don't think there was anything wrong with it. It was tough to start with. But if you got your eye in, there was plenty of runs to get. If you remember, England made a lot of starts. There were a lot of players that got into their 20s and 30s. That tells me that the pitch was fine. Yes, it was tough to start with, but that's the way it is. So I've really got no problems with this pitch per se. I think you've got to look at the batting and shot selection by both teams, to be honest, more than the pitch.
I agree with most of that. I did think that although some people did get starts, nobody other than Travis Head looked fully in on that surface. Yeah. You always felt like even when there was half an hour with no wickets, there might be 2 just around the corner. And I actually tweeted on lunchtime on day 2. England were in a tremendous position at that stage, but it just felt to me like there were maybe 4 quick wickets going to fall after lunch. I didn't quite think they would capitulate as badly as they did do. But it felt like it was going to be a close test. But obviously, Travis Head made it not close because he played absolutely magnificently. I mean, a word about him, Lucas. I think he's the best player, best batter across both sides, to be honest, in Australian conditions. And I thought he was simply superb on day 2. And everything that England had in their armoury, all the hopes they had when they came out there, they bowled way too short all the way through. I don't know what they were playing at. We'll get on to that in a second. But I thought he just took the game by the scruff of the neck and won it. He was superb.
Yeah, I don't know Travis personally, but I have played against him in Prem cricket. A young kid coming through, just like me. We're around about the same age. I'm a little bit older. But no, he's gone through a lot. Travis said, he's been in and out of this test team. When he first started, there was a lot of criticism of the way he played. Criticism, I thought, probably was a bit fair at the time because he was like that. He hasn't, his first test and his test now, he hasn't changed the way he's played. He's been the same. And he has got some level of criticism with that, but he is well respected within the cricket fans. He's well loved. Adelaide boy, tea tree gully boy as well. They love him in Adelaide. When he hits hundreds in Adelaide, and especially in Test matches, he comes out and says, it's one of his better achievements and then he scores another one at Adelaide Oval. He calls that his best 100. But no, he's gone through a lot, Travis Head, in his career, in and out of the team. So I'm just really glad that he's able to perform and stay in this team. And as you said, he's one of the best batsmen. I didn't see it coming. I won't talk about actually because we can get into that. But his form going into this test has been pretty poor, to be honest. He had one game of Sheffield Shield, which he was really poor in. The first innings, he gave away his wicket very cheaply. We just talked about that. So this 100 came from absolutely nowhere for me. Just tells you what versatile he is. He can do it at 5, and he apparently can do it as an opener. He averages 50 as an opener. So he's very versatility, isn't it, across all formats as well, James?
I mean, there was one stage in the second innings of England where they were 65 for 1 and had a lead of 40 for the first innings, so effectively 105 for 1 in their second dig. And at that stage, you were thinking, look, now setting 300, this is England's match. And from there, some of the shot selections, some of the performances by England. Well, I've seen loads of comments across social media. Geoffrey Boycott's been very vocal. I've seen Alex Stewart defend England and say that's their game plan, they need to stick to it. But there's that saying, isn't there, in life, that if you make mistakes, if you kind of do the same thing over and over again, how are you going to get better results? And if you look at England's record, yes, they've beaten some of the teams playing some good cricket, and there's been some fantastic days in this BazBall kind of era. But you look at the results against Australia, you look at the results against India, which is really the benchmark. They're the kind of the big three in world cricket. I don't think England have played South Africa very recently, who were a very good team as well. But they are kind of doubling down, tripling down, quadrupling down on the fact that this is how they play. This is how they're going to kind of go at the Australians. But when you're trying to drive through the covers on a ball that's actually bouncing on you, you're trusting to look a little bit. Yeah, there's skill involved if you crack it to the boundary, but the amount of players that edged off to slip or behind from balls that are outside their off stump. Zach Crawley. I mean, I'm going to crow a little bit because I made a couple of predictions last week. And I said Mitchell Starc to be the leading Australian wicket taker. He was simply brilliant. Led the line in the absence of Cummins and Hazelwood absolutely magnificently. And I said Travis Head to be the leading run scorer. But one of the other predictions I made was that I feared, and to be honest, I mean, it's only one test into 5, but I had hopes that some people could maybe stand up and be counted. But my fears are more likely to come true, or have been so far, in that Zach Crawley, absolutely Mitchell Starc's bunny. That catch he took in the second innings was incredible, but Zach Crawley didn't seem to have any clue of how to play Mitchell Starc in those opening overs, out in the first over of both for a pair. And the first shot, his dismissal in the first innings, you could probably go through 50% of Zach Crawley's dismissals in Test cricket comfortably, and it's almost like exactly the same shot. And you're thinking, well, what is he actually learning here? What is he taking on board? What lessons is he taking from previous disappointments? Because he's playing exactly the same way. And I know they pick him because he's capable of getting a quick 70 and setting the game up for England. But the majority of Zach Crawley's innings are disappointing. And I would prefer personally to have somebody with maybe a little bit less flamboyance and a bit more solidity, who was able to kind of see off that new ball, see off the shine, protect Joe Root and co further down the order, and average maybe sort of 30, but getting 30 every single time, rather than somebody that gets 83 and averages somewhere kind of around 28. I don't know what Ben Stokes has said. He's ignoring all of the outside noise. He's ignoring all of the comments from elsewhere. All of these people, majority of it, I mean, Geoffrey Boycott has played a lot of Test cricket. He knows what he's talking about. Yeah. When it comes to cricket, I am more than happy to listen to what Geoffrey Boycott says. And he's right. You do the same things over and over again. Why would you expect anything different? And the kind of Harry Brook comes in and dances down the track first ball. And he got a valuable 50 in the first innings, but it was kind of like watch from behind the sofa stuff, because he could have been out pretty much any ball. And this kind of strategy that England have, we're going to back ourselves, we're going to be flamboyant, we're going to take the attack to the bowlers, we're going to be X, Y, Z. It is just fraught with danger, because the good days are outweighed by the disappointing days. And England should have won that first test. They had a real opportunity. Cummins and Hazelwood missing, 105 runs ahead with just 1 wicket down in the second D. Having lost 13 test matches out the last 3 tours without a win, it was a chance to really get rid of that baggage, get rid of the fact that at the moment we can't win in Australia. And it would have set the series up beautifully. From a neutral's perspective, England 1-0. I mean, it wouldn't have made you smile, but England 1-0 up after 1 test match with 4 to play would have set the series up absolutely brilliantly. But the fear, I think, from England's point of view, is they're going to just do the same again. They're going to be the same again. And why are we going to expect anything different from this team, England? And, a 4-0 or something is probably on the cards now, because
it's stupidity. It's just stupidity.
But it's going to get harder for England, because these tours are long tours. And when you're losing, it's demoralising. And then the danger is that people will start to question this ethos inside the dressing room, and you'll get fractures and you'll get internal fallings out. So I fear at the moment for England. I mean, fingers crossed they come back strong, but I do fear for England. And the only positive I'll take from this test for England was how the 5 bowlers bowled in the first innings, because I thought that was as good a bowling performance as a unit from England as I've seen for possibly ever. There's been great days in the field for England in the past, but it tends to have been a Stuart Broad 7-foot, or an individual kind of like or maybe 2 bowlers taking the attention. Whereas I thought all 5 bowlers in the first innings against Australia hit their straps. Were pretty much 10 out of 10. Obviously Ben Stokes picked up his wickets, got the most wickets, but I thought Mark Wood bowled well. I thought Gus Atkinson bowled well. I thought they really, as a team, hunted as a pack. And I was really impressed with that. But they let themselves down in the second D because they were just too short. All of the discipline and concentration they'd showed in the first innings just disappeared in the second dig, and I just didn't see where it went to. And Ben Stokes didn't seem to have any clue about how to try and tackle it and get themselves back into the game. And after about 8 overs of that second innings, England's heads had dropped, and it just seemed like the writing was on the wall. So I have to be honest, I fear for England in this series.
Oh, wow. Where do we start with that? Well, first of all, it made me very happy. We're at 1-0. I think they got to take a leaf out of Travis Head's book. Now, he opened in the second innings, but he found it tough very early. It wasn't like he was 20 off 10 balls. At the very start, he found it very difficult to score runs. He got through sometimes, James, you've got to get through the storm. England don't want to do that. They just think, well, we've got to go in the eye of the storm and just bat like bull out of the gate. Saw that with Ollie Pope, Harry Brook. All made good starts, James. And you're right, they probably should have made a lead of 300. They all made good starts. I thought Starc was. I said to you last show, Starc's the bet for me. I think he's past Cummins. That if you're not convinced, then you're convinced now. Unbelievable. I said to you also that I think Starc will wake up thinking he can get Cawley out first over, but he got him out in a different way. This is what IQ bowling does. This is high IQ bowling. He wasn't trying to whip out the Zach Cawley's off stump or leg stump like he did with Rory Burns. Mitchell Starc knew that Zach Cawley wanted bat on ball, so all he did was away swingers away from the body of Zach Cawley. Zach Cawley couldn't help himself. The lead is your best friend on moving pitches, but that doesn't seem to work with England because they want to play at everything. Scott Boland, for me, I was disappointed with Scott bowling in the first innings. He was, I think, tried too hard, bowled a little bit too quick. If you saw his pace, he was bowling at 139, 140, Scott Boland. Now, sometimes when you bowl that quick, you lose your accuracy, and he was over pitching. He's much better when he's bowling 130, 135. But he did a hell of a comeback in that second innings. 4 for 33. He did a lot of damage in that second innings. He took quick wickets. When he gets on a roll, he's almost hard to stop. He got Brook out, Pope, Brook. Who's the other one he got out very quickly? Actually, what would have been Cawley, Pope, and Brook. He got them out in the space of 10 minutes, James. And they're all the same dismissals, trying to drive him. And it wasn't enough, Crawley. Oh, sorry, yeah. So all the dismissals they were trying to drive him, and with a moving ball, cannot do that. You have to leave it. And England just lost the plot. I said to you this also last week. When it starts to go wrong, how and their heads dropped, how can they mentally come back from that? They didn't. I thought Ben Stokes was horrible in that second innings. He just was in a world of his own, waiting for something to drop on his lap. There was a field at one point to Travis Head where, you remember the field to Kawaja at the Ashes where it was an umbrella field? It was like the opposite of the umbrella. It was like the upside down umbrella. He had not a clue where to bowl. I felt for Cass, I felt for Atkins, because there was, I showed you this, Atkins bowled, and when he got back, hands on hips, he looked rejected. He looked like he didn't want to be there. Cass was the same thing. I thought Cass was really good in that first innings, by the way, James, and drop Archer. But when the going got tough, this team just crumbled. We saw it in India, and we saw it in this first innings. That was the real disappointment, that even Ben Stokes, I've seen Ben Stokes at times when he bowls, James, he asks the fielders to come with him, to clap, show support. He didn't even do that. He did nothing. That's not what a captain should do. And I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll tell you what I think epitomises what you've just said is that Steve Smith and Marnus Labuschagne in the first innings didn't get big scores. But there was a period there of about 30 minutes maybe where Steve Smith was getting peppered. He was hit on the elbow, he was hit on the ribs, he was hit on the hand, he was hit everywhere. And he gritted his teeth and tried to battle it out. Now, he didn't go on and get a big score, but he wasted a load of balls there. Whilst the England bowlers were really on fire and they were really bowling with venom, Steve Smith soaked all of that up. And what that did, his individual performance maybe didn't change the course of the game. But it did stop the batters coming in behind him having to come in and face that, because he basically took the blows for his team, and then he got out. But he kind of wasted sort of 5 or 6 overs there of really tough bowling, which somebody else coming in may have been at first ball, and all of a sudden Australia are all out for next to nothing. So England don't do that. England basically, if one of them got hit on the elbow, they'd be trying to hit the next ball for 6, and it's just bonkers cricket.
And that's my point, James. Like I said, sometimes you just have to survive the storm. You just have to survive it. Cannot go ultra aggressive in a storm. Are you kidding me? And you hit the nail on the head. More often than not, you're going to get burnt. And they did, first innings when they attacked Boland, mind you, he overpitched a lot. I thought England's straight driving was fantastic in that first innings. Pope and Book especially. But then you see Joe Root playing a drive, 5-6 stump line off Starc. Ben Stokes, his batting is really worrying me. He's supposed to be a leader, and it seems to me all Starc needs to do is just bowl it outside off, and it'll take his off stump.
Weird with Ben Stokes, because Ben Stokes is leading this BazBall side, but Ben Stokes' approach is very different to the others.
Yeah.
Ben Stokes started off this BazBall era by basically playing some ridiculous shots and getting himself out and skying the ball and getting caught. But nowadays, he comes in and he withstands pressure by trying to bat 60 balls for 3 runs. He soaks it up. He's basically doing something totally different to what he's asking Harry Brook and others to do, or seemingly asking them to do. And this kind of comeback about, well, this is how we play. This is how we do. We've had success. We're entertaining the masses. We're saving world cricket. It's just absolute bollocks. Win matches. The thing that actually entertains England supporters more than anything is England winning a test match. It's not entertaining in a two-day defeat. It's winning a test match, actually being competitive in these Ashes. And, you fear for England. Pat Cummins will be coming back probably for test match number 2. Hazelwood, I think, he's out for a bit longer, isn't he? I think
he's not playing test 2,
his injury's a little bit worse than they thought. But, Cummins comes back in for Doggett, who I thought didn't do himself any harm. It might be the only time he ever plays for Australia, he can value that test cap very much indeed. But it's not going to get any easier for England. This is going to get harder and harder and harder. And, it kind of doubling down on a losing formula just seems like a ridiculous thing to do. It just seems really arrogant. It seems disrespectful. There was
one quote where Ben Stokes said that, well, we can't defend. You can't expect us to defend. I thought that quote was absolute BS. That you're a captain, you don't say that. I'm sorry. That, with all due respect, you don't say that. Well, this is Test cricket. This is not T20. We just saw a player in India defend for 110 balls in the test against South Africa. for 11 runs. You're telling me there's no place for defence in the England team? You've got to be kidding me.
You're professional cricketers who should be multifaceted. You should be able to attack when you need to attack. You should be able to defend and guts it out. This is Test cricket. This tests every aspect of the game. You don't be completely one-dimensional with just the attack mode set on your PlayStation.
And this is not a club game. This is the Ashes series. You put it all on the line, and you had, and that, James, to your credit, you had Australia, you had them, but you just got yourselves out of it with terrible shot selection, bat on ball. They're obsessed with bat on ball. You cannot do that on moving pitches. Cannot do that. Scott Boland just proved that in the second innings. We ripped them apart. It's just absolute stupid, and for them to double down, even McCallum to double down. I'm sorry, I think that's the wrong message. That if my Australian coach said that, I'd go absolutely mad. I'd call on that straight away. That just wouldn't be unacceptable. But if that's the way they want to play, James, if that's the way they want to play, well, if they go down 2-0, well, mate, you might as well pack up your stuff and go home and fall for the rest of the series. If that's how they want to go.
I think there's the big danger here for McCullum. I mean, Rob Key he's almost got Teflon knickers. Nothing seems to stick to Rob Key. He's been in charge of this BazBall era. And as I say, they have beaten some teams. And there have been some fantastic days, but they're against the really big fish. Look at the results against India, against Australia and stuff. They haven't necessarily beaten them at home, and they don't win away. Nothing's changed in terms of that. The results are exactly the same as they were prior to COVID, but we have some entertaining days, and we have some even worse disappointments, really, because when they're up against it, they try and fight back, and they end up losing 7 wickets for 70. It's a regular occurrence, this, and you do need to be multifaceted. You do need to grit your teeth. You do need to sometimes recognise that a bowler is bowling a very, very good spell and see him off, and maybe wear a few, and kind of show a bit of grit and determination. They just don't do it. Harry Brook will dance down and try and hit him over extra cover for 6. It's just, it loses his shape doing it. It just makes no sense.
This in order to beat world-class teams, you've got to be mentally strong. I don't see that with England. I'm sorry, I just don't see that. This result, well, not result, but the way it happened, this kind of reminds me of the Test match against India and Adelaide when India got walled for 46. Like Travis Head gave them an absolute beat down in that second innings. Now India, mentally strong team, came back, won that series. So now it's up. Now all I'm hearing is Ben Stokes saying, "Well, we got to bounce back. We got to come back stronger. This is what we do." Blah blah blah. All right, let's see what you got. Let's see if you can come back after that beat down by Travis Head, and let's see what you got. But if they go down 2-0, James, well, and they play like that, I'm sorry, it's feel for the neutral. I don't care. I'll be laughing. But it's going to be 4-5-0. And do we want that in a marquee Ashes series? Probably not. Again, I probably don't care personally. But for a neutral, it's not good cricket, to be honest.
I think 2-day Test matches anywhere in the world are poor. I mean, there is a caveat to that. It was 2 entertaining days, and being on this side of the world trying to commentate on it, going through the night isn't always the easiest thing. And it was enthralling cricket, so it kept me awake and kept me entertained. But we don't want just 10 days of the Ashes series across 5 Test matches. We want to get some hundreds. We want to see some runs scored. There's more to life than just bowlers being on top all the time. And I know the Aussies are creating green tops, and there's a rationale to that, but but the batting sides just aren't good enough to cope with it. We're going to get 2-day or 2.5-day Test matches, which I think would be disappointing. I saw somebody interviewed one of the England lads had been gone down there to, it's his only day going to Australia to watch it. He got tickets for all 5 days of the Test, and he saw 2 days cricket, and that's his only experience of going to Australia to watch the Ashes Test. And that's not, you're letting people down if that's going to be a regular thing. I fear for England, and that thing you said about we can't defend, so we've got to attack. That is just absolute nonsense. If you look around the county scene, there are some very, very good players who have got defensive games, who can defend. And I don't get me wrong. There's a balance. You can have your attacking players in your lineup, but you probably do need more than just Joe Root, who is able to actually stick around and bat for long periods. Maybe Dom Sibley was too defensive, but you do need somebody to be in there who can, see off the new ball, get some overs into Mitchell Starc's legs to tire him out a little bit. These are all like plays within a play. Across a 5-day test match, there's all of these little battles going on, and it might not catch the headlines if as Zach Crawley say, bats 3 hours for 30 runs. But those 3 hours soaked up and put overs into the legs of the bowlers. It's got the new ball old, and it has an impact on the game. It might not be a headline impact, but they all of these little things have impacts on the game. And England just seem to have one trick. I saw Mark Butcher say they'd be terrible at playing poker because they've either got a fantastic hand or nothing, and there's nothing in between. You can't blag that. And the more England play like this, the more Australia will be rubbing their hands, because if they, Zach Crawley, throw one up there outside of his half stump, he might crack one to 4, but get out to the next one. It's as clear as day, isn't it? And it is so frustrating from an English perspective. It's so frustrating because we were in that test match, 105 for 1 effectively in that second dig, and had a chance to notch the first test win in Australia since the 2010-11 series, and they just blew that. They just fluffed their lines. They forgot the script. They forgot what they were supposed to do. They forgot everything they were supposed to do as England cricketers, and just played crappy cricket. To be honest, it was just, excuse my French, it was shit. And that is not what you expect an England team to go down there to do. They should be selling their wickets as dear as they possibly can.
It's a bit like the. Do you remember the Ashes in England, the second test, where Australia had no right to win that, and England did the same thing there in their second innings, just threw their wickets away. So they're not learning. They're thinking that they can get themselves out of that situation, blast their way out of the situation, which I don't mind on those kind of pitches. Sometimes that's what it takes, and so be it. But as you said, more often than not, your name's going to have written on it, your name is going to be on it, and you're going to nick it. The Australian bowlers weren't trying to bowl stump to stump lines, and this comes down to IQ bowling. All they were doing, especially Starc and bowling in that second innings where he picked up 4 for 33. All he was doing was bowling outside off stump. Bowling never bowls that line. Even Mitchell Starc doesn't bowl that line. But they knew that these batsmen could not help themselves. They want bat on ball, and they said, all right, we're going to bowl it outside off stump, hit us. And it just absolutely fell apart in that second innings, fell apart really in the first innings of Mitchell Starc. So you've got to be smarter. You've got to survive the storm. You've got to leave it. Leave is your best offense on these pitches. And they didn't want to do that. They just wanted to counterattack that. Can't do that. Bad mistake.
You can leave on length as well on Aussie surfaces. Yeah. Nobody does that either. So I mean, the kind of, I guess the supporters of the BazBall era would hark back to the Ashes test at Headingley. And there have been situations with England where they have turned an obvious draw into a win. They have turned maybe a defeat into a victory by playing this kind of cricket. But they are outweighed by the number of times where they're in a winning position and they throw it away. Overall, the ledger, I think, is against it, and particularly against the big three, Australia and India. There really is only that Ashes test at Headingley where that sort of. I mean, but even then, on that occasion, Ben Stokes wasn't cavalier. Ben Stokes actually played with the brain that day. It wasn't traditional. The rest of them further up the order played BazBall cricket. Ben Stokes came in and actually thought it through, and only went up the gears when he had to, and he was with Jack Leach at the end. This is really. I fear for Rob Key, and I fear for Brendan McCullum, and I probably fear for Ben Stokes, because if this goes the way I think it's going to go now, and it ends up being 4-0, 5-0, England teams do not stay the same after a smashing in the Ashes. They just don't. And Rob Key's going to have to go. And all of this stuff about, we're picking these players. I mean, for the last 2 or 3 years, or ever since the last time Australia were in England, it's been we're gearing up for the Ashes. That's been the kind of subtext of everything. We're picking these players. We're trusting Shoaib Bashir. We're trusting Zach Crawley, because in the Ashes, a quick 100 from Zach Crawley could win the Test match. Well, he got a pair in the first Test, and it was so predictable, a pair. You could see it coming a mile off, and he doesn't seem to have the game to do anything about it. And that's not if you've got an England player in there who can only score runs on flat tracks against mediocre attacks, he's not a Test player. He's, you could pick anybody out. You could pick a load of players out of the county circuit, and they could have their day in the sun every now and again and be walking wickets the rest of it. They're all professional cricketers in the county championship. There's plenty that you could throw in there that could do the job Zach Crawley's doing. I like Ben Duckett. I thought Ollie Pope showed signs of being a little less frenetic at the start of his innings, and I thought he played some nice shots. Yeah. There's more to come from Joe Root, because we know Joe Root's class, and he'll find a way at some stage in this series to notch runs. But overall, and as I say, the 5-man bowling attack I thought was excellent in the first innings, but not the second.
Yeah,
so positives, but not.
Sorry, it was Duckett that got bowled, and I kept on saying Crawley, so it was Duckett, Pope, and Brook in the space of 10 minutes. Duckett, for me, I think Duckett has a fantastic technique. But again, he is a victim of his own poor self. The BazBall batter on ball. But he made 2 starts in that game in this Test match. So I kind of like the way he plays, but you got to dial it back on these pitches. Jake, I wanted just to comment on Jake Weatherall. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
just one thing on Ben Duckett. I think he has got this ridiculously low percentage of leaves in Test cricket, but he actually did leave a few. There were a few in this one where he actually left them and he played a little bit more sensibly, and he looked like he'd actually got a game plan. I mean, he kept coming down the track to Scott Boland, which didn't really work in his favour in the end. They'd obviously had a team discussion and thought the best way of taking on Scott Boland was to dance down to him, which didn't really work for many people. But I think Ben Duckett is a very, very fine player.
Yeah, well, before I thought Boland bowled well in that second innings, not before those wickets, but all day on day 2. And you're right, Duckett really struggling against Boland, but he was defending, he was surviving the storm. But then there was one he just couldn't help himself, and then Brook did the same thing. And then Pope did the same thing. He was already set. I want to talk about a little bit about, and then you can wrap it up if you want. Just on Jake Weatherall. That first ball we got from Archer, absolute cracking of a delivery. I was like, oh, Jake, you little such and such. But compared to Mick Sweeney, who looked absolutely a nervous wreck, couldn't get bat on ball, I thought Jake Weatherall played extremely well in the second innings. He looked like he belonged. He looked like he'll be there all Ashes. Khawaja, for me, is an issue. I don't know what was going on with apparently his injury is back. There's a lot of stories going on. I don't want to go on to it, but if that's the case, well, he shouldn't be really playing if he's getting back spasms. So I don't want to see Head opening because I like Head counter-attacking in the middle overs. But if they're chasing 100 or 150, then I'm all for it. But Renshaw just hit 100 in a day-night shield match the other day. So I reckon there'll be temptation to bring him over Khawaja, and if that's the case, I don't think Khawaja will ever play again. So there's a decision to be made on Nathan Lyon. Do you really need a spinner on these pitches, James? Probably not. Remember, it's going to be a pink ball test at the Gabba, and the Gabba the last 3 years have been an absolute green monster. Very low scores. So do you really need Lyon then when you got
I think Australia are a better team with Nathan Lyon in it. It just has that balance.
Yeah,
and
of course. Yeah.
Even on a pitch that's not turning, he can come on and bowl you 5 or 6 very tidy overs, and you can trust him to do that. So I would always play Nathan Lyon. I'd always play.
I agree with that. I've said on this show many times that I think he's the one bowler that you can't replace because there's not many options domestically if Nathan Lyon did get an injury. So I agree with that. But if he's not bowling, maybe you can put a Bo Webster, maybe you can put a Peter Hanscom at number 7.
I thought Weatherall did really well in the second dig because he soaked up about 12 balls before he got off the mark, and you were thinking, come on, Jake, you can get a run here, get yourself off the mark. And he was, but he looked nervous, but he kind of kept himself in check, didn't he? And he managed to, and what you can see his strategy. There's going to be a ball come along at some stage where I can get a run, and he just was patient. And that's, again, patience is a virtue in Test cricket. Who knew? Rishi Yadav says, Head should not open. And he says, retire Khawaja and play Coach Lucas. Well, I mean, Rishi, maybe the first part of that's right, but I don't think the Australians are quite that desperate just yet.
Well, I think batting at 11 is far too high for me, even at 11. But bowling, yeah, I could lose the weight and go how back I was 10 years ago, picking up 40 wickets in a season. But we'll see. Depending on the pitches, really suit me. So we'll wait and see. But definitely not the batting, James. If you're looking for me to bat well, then you've got no hope. All is lost. So I don't know why you're asking me to bat for. I wouldn't.
I thought it was very symptomatic of the social media kind of era. This last point of this test, pod, and we'll wrap it up. But the Jake Weatherald, after one innings, where he got two cracking balls, the first one kind of roughed him up a little bit, and the second one basically felled him, and he was absolutely trapped bang in front. But there were calls for his head after 2 balls of Test cricket, and you're thinking he's got in there for a reason. They've obviously seen something in him, and they've picked him. You've got to give players 2 or 3, 4 Test matches to kind of settle down and show what they can do. Suggesting you drop somebody after 2 balls of Test cricket is just ridiculous. But that's how we live in. Either people are crap or they're amazing. There's nothing in between.
Here's a fun fact for you. The second innings when they put on 50 was the highest opening partnership in Australia for 3 years.
Yeah. Well, it was the first Test match ever that all 3 sides that had batted across the first 3 innings were 0 for 1 after 1 over. A wicket fell in the first over of every single, and then all 3 teams were 0 for 1. That's the first. All the Test cricket that's been played, that has never happened before. So it just shows you how the early wickets fell. Anyway, we will look ahead to the second Test next time we see you. And there is a little bit of a gap, isn't there? But we'll be back probably next week. So I'm looking ahead to the second Test and what have you. And hopefully, come on, England, show a little bit of spine, show a little bit of the brain. And well played to Australia, Lucas. I have to say, well played, Australia. And you 1-0 up in the series.
Yeah, it's hard to wipe the smile off this face, James. You want to win that next Test, because if you go down 2-0, well, I think you can put the Ashes out and give it to us. No need for the next 3 Test matches. So, Starkey, we want to see the same thing from you, mate, and roll England again and break their spirits.
There's as me here. I mean, I obviously want to see England do well, but I like to see good cricket. And generally speaking, I want to see the best team win. But in this series, that horrible little face there with the massive smile on it. Come on, England, wipe it off his face, please. Wipe it off his face. Anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And we will see you again very soon on the Cricket Badger podcast. Cheers all and enjoy the cricket. Come on, England. Be better. Be better.